And I was going to put that I hit rock bottom in June, but as I look back over the year, I thought, no, July was quite bad as well, and August was, August was fairly dreadful, and September wasn't an awful lot better. Like, I should add, they don't let me out often, and now you know why. But surprising things can happen. I mean, I do bring a message of hope. surprising things can happen. We lost half the team and started to reshape it. And I got a chance email from a young guy. I didn't know him. He was an intern. He's a student at St Andrews University, and he said, "Could you come and work for us for free, volunteer?" And he was interested in communications and media. He was actually an English literature student. So, okay, come in. And at the same time, my boss sort of thought, oh, he said, we've got a young lad in here, he'll help us with social media. She'd learned the 2 words as well. But she was different. She said, but we'll do it. She says, but I'll go on as well, and together we'll learn what we're doing so that, I'll know what you're saying, you know what you're doing, and we'll get Callum, the intern, to help us to do it. And I have to say, it sounds ridiculous. You're going, what, you couldn't trust a student to do it? Honestly, he was the best thing. Put it out there on Twitter. Callum here, the intern student, was an absolute joy. Bright, he would do anything. You'd ask him, could you go and do a research on, do a guideline for social media on Twitter? He'd come back by the next that day. Turned it out, he researched really quick, sharp. Everyone said, what a joy and a pleasure he was. And he was sort of saying, well, you need to do monitoring, and here's how you do that. He'd done all of that stuff for us. So we thought, I was going to say, that's okay, Callum, the intern, sorting us all out. Which seems a bit ridiculous, you would think, in 12,000 of a staff, and you've got the great and the good. But I put this trust into him, and to this day, I thought it was a fantastic bit of judgment. And some people said, it's not fair, you're paying him a bit of attention. The bloke was in there doing for free. At least that we could do was give him the best experience possible. So with his help, we started to tackle social media. Now here's a tip. Now you'll know I'm not an expert on this, but I did have to get going in it. What they don't tell you on Twitter and social media, you hear about, Stephen Fry, millions of people. They don't prepare you for what it's like when you've got 12 followers. No, they don't. And the next day, you've got 10. Prepare yourself for that. Honestly, it's gutting. You take it personally. Anyone puts anything bad up there, you take it personally. It's not. Get over it, because once you get up to 35, you're flying. And then that's what I mean. It's ridiculous. I got no followers. My mum's embarrassed.
Well, 11 now.
And the place, and there's a serious point here around, if you ask me, would I choose to do it? No, I wouldn't. Do I feel professional responsibility in the head of public relations and engagement to get myself geared up to it? Yes, I do. And if I think I can't do that, then get the heck out of the way and let someone in. But my background, we didn't even have a phone in the house. We used to get out to the telephone box here. And it's a bit like, people will abuse it. Of course people will abuse it. We knew how to tap out a phone number in there without putting in cash. There will be social media equivalents of that. And my actual background, just to realise that if you're feeling rotten about yourself, you're going to be, your bosses will love you after they've seen this. My actual background is I'm a behavioural ecologist. I studied swallows. Absolutely no use to the boss whatsoever at all. But I tried to tell her that actually there's lots of analogies in this. It's all about I'm studying behaviour, little cues, communication cues. It's all vital. How is it that they can go all the way over to Africa and back to the exact same spot? Amazing. There's nothing new that's coming up now that will be more amazing than in the past. So remember that. And so we launched this, and our website is terrible, so you don't need to tell me that. We know what it's all about. So we launched this series, Who We Are. I came up with the idea, she says modestly, and then thereafter everyone else has done all the good work. So we've got, and it's a light touch. It's not something that takes, like a load of time. It's a light touch, but the idea around it is that we promote the range of staff. And after that C. diff outbreak, I went and sat down with the domestics and their manager. Because I actually thought, it was day in, day out in the paper, and people were fed up with it. And I thought, well, never mind it being a bit sort of, it's not good for the PR of the organisation. What must it have been like in that shift, day in, day out, having to deal with that? And what must it have been like for patients and the public responding to it? Could we do something that might just lift morale? And we spoke to 4 domestic supervisors, and it'd be suffice to say that they're kind of like, here's another comedian of a manager coming along to tell us that we're valued. And the point about this was saying, well, I said, you can be cynical if you want, or we can give you our Twitter account and hand it over to you, and you can tell us in your words what it's like. You don't have to do it, but don't whine to me then that you're not going. And we had that kind of that kind of a dialogue. So didn't patronise them. You sit there whining, bumping your gums, or we can try and raise your profile. And they rose to the challenge. And the first person that we actually did was our nursing infant feeding advisor. And in June when we launched it. And actually it was the first bit of good news that we'd had. That's the manager of Raidmore Hospital. We'd just gone baby friendly. And Callum, the intern, you know, most of the guys that I work with are always giving me, I need this bit of equipment or that, but he gets home with his mobile phone, took it, the newspaper took it, we got all our permissions, and we'd actually got something a little bit positive. And the point about this happens to be that there's a bit of a theme that everyone that we then worked with in the Who We Are series, there were several other outlets that we had for them in terms of local newspapers and other things. It wasn't a one-off thing, so they're like our friends for life. And July, so I was getting a bit perky, so July we started getting this, Penny Taylor started tweeting about us, bumped it up to 19, but she was a bit more important, so I was like, well, it's quality that counts. Enjoying the enthusiastic tweets from the intern. I mean, suffice to say that he wasn't using our boring kind of language. The boss was getting a little bit anxious at that point. But and then she tweeted back to say, what a cool team we are. There you go, you can ignore all the other rubbish. We've got 2 tweets that said something nice. That's enough for me. And then we got this, Physio this week has given us great insight to direct hands-on care. We've got quite a lot of tweets on this, and I was thinking it's going to work. This guy, he wasn't sure if he'd do it, but then he did do it. And we've got more people coming in on that. And then, Twittergate. I'll come to you at some point. And I didn't want to put this in a slide just in case anyone took it away, because I didn't want to give. Is there anyone here from the Press and Journals? Don't record this, but you're not my favourite paper. Front page, full front page, inside, third page, an editorial. And whilst they were at it, a chance to say something that was ghastly about the organisation. Staff were irresponsible, they should be sacked. And then, of course, it went really quite. The Sun wasn't really my highlight to get into the Sun. Medic tweets about patients farting. It was pish poor journalism as well. It even said on the website he was a physiotherapist, but they called it, you said it was a medic. And we felt it was quite unjust, but actually we didn't panic because it seemed so ridiculous that this tweet that went out was generating an MSP, created quite a bit of interest. 2 MSPs quite a bit of interest. Patient Association took a particular interest, but never ever spoken to us about it. They never actually saw the original tweet. They then started commenting on a comment from a comment, and became more expert the more rubbish that they were commenting on. But what was important was not to be too defensive about it and actually take a measured view. Do we need to calm down here? Do we need to remove the tweet? We had to go through all those decisions. And although we had a bit of a framework, we didn't have the full detailed plan in place. And that's where I go back to my point why it was critical that the chief exec and the chair in particular, not just because they were the chief exec and the chair, but because they were my line manager, that they were like, let's not panic. And their first response was, well, do we think it's been inappropriate? You know, and do we understand it? And actually, is our colleague all right? Because if this started to go out all over the papers, we were quite anxious about him. And I've just spoken to both the MSP yesterday to say, look, you know, John, 6 months on, how are you feeling about that? I'm talking to the audience, is there anything you'd like me to say? And he goes, do you want me to give me a letter of endorsement? I said, no, I don't want a letter of endorsement, I just want to know, can we go through how that went? And in hindsight, what did you think? And actually he did, you know, he made some legitimate comments, so we don't have a problem with people having a go about it. But of course what happened then is we got a letter of complaint based on something that had been read in the Sun, a formal letter of complaint, which then meant we actually put it down the formal complaints route. And actually that was helpful. And one bit of advice that we got was, instead of just running it through our normal NHS Highland Twitter account, that we should set it up as a separate Who We Are series, because what one comment was that people actually lost the thread in amongst the millions of followers that we had. That they lost their, so we set it up as a separate account, and to this day it still works like that. And again, so infant feeding advisor, we now had a successful run of the tweets. We then won a UNICEF award, so we're now in sort of towards the end of the year. We've got one or two boards for the UNICEF award, and they had the Doctor Who lady from Karen came to do that presentation. And suffice to say, so the point was that we could start with something little that built up a relationship not just with our staff but with their client group. The volunteers, one of the big successes about this is I've got a big pool of volunteers. volunteers. We also invited them to the annual event, and they've kind of sort of got a different view about us. So it's not just one thing. It's really important that all these things kind of work together. This is a dreadful secret. We've done a newspaper now that's gone out to every household in Highland, 150 households. You'll imagine that that's come with a set of fluster itself about whether we should be doing it. But part of that, we've included that around explaining to people about what we've done and calling for people to say who they'd like us to follow. So we've had a bit more interest in that. And then sort of looking on to that now, looking at our news page now, it's about actually saying we've got a much more, we have now got a lot more social media in there, and it's much more accessible for people to get into it. We've got patient opinion in there as well. And someone was sort of saying about, oh, can you trust people? You know, our view is that we are trusting staff every day of every week of every hour to do really important things. We've got 12,000 staff. I'm sure someone's going to stuff up at some point. But that doesn't mean that you sort of write the whole thing off. So you've got to have trust in people, and you've got to give them a little bit of support though round about that. And then sort of now where we're kind of getting it to, the big shift in the patient who spoke earlier on, he said about going from being reactive to proactive. And that's been the big change that we've had to try and do by changing staff around, by changing our priorities. How do we get more positive stuff out that reflects the organisation? You'll always get bad news. Unfortunately, we will make mistakes. We won't always get things right. We've got to deal with that in a responsible and mature way. But I think for morale, even for public confidence, getting a balanced picture out there of what we're doing is better. And here the link is, so here up there we've got really big things up in the sky, where we've got 2 hospitals that are sort of need to be dealt with in the next 5 or 6 years. What are we going to do about that? So we've got big bits of engagement there. We've got pupils getting an insight into healthcare. And the point about the who we are, so the next step for that is actually to link that in with schools. Get with schools. So if we're focusing on audiology, so anyone in the school knows anything about audiology, go into your community and find out about audiology. Or if it's orthopaedics or whatever it happens to be. And then now in terms of the Twitter, when we've got nothing else to go out, but we know at least we can put out something in who's tweeting this week. And when we started this, some of the team were a little bit around oh, I can't find anyone. We've got 1,200 people. What are you talking about? You can't find someone. You won't find someone if you sat on your backside in your office. So get out and find someone to do it. And then recruit more people. And when you've recruited someone, be lovely to them, because they will recruit more people. Be nice to them. They'll enjoy it. And then we do a thing, and the thing was that every day we put out a comms update which goes to our senior managers and executives. Can you imagine what it felt like when we were putting out, you know, here's the dreary news at the end of the day. Nothing positive to report, and here's a list of negatives. So now, at least, we've always got something positive to go out. Hopefully it's a mixed picture, and it's a whole range of things, so we're trying to reflect that a little bit more. And I think Richard said, has there been any surprises? Life is full of surprises. One of the surprises we did is that actually the local newspapers now follow us, and they're actually quite often tweeting our stories. And particularly some of the local papers, where we know the editors quite well, actually they're now picking up on those things. They're now actually taking a series called NHS Highland at your service, so every month we can give them a whole story around that. And here's one that's around our public health. That's rubbish, and that's rubbish as well. I'll get back to that. Maybe they're not so rubbish, I might hold them. Our Public of Health did a piece of work around the relative age effect in footballers, young footballers. And we did a story, and this story is about this here, that why in Scotland Messi probably wouldn't have made it into the international career. Messi's an international footballer, don't know. And why he would make it, because he's quite little. Because we have a much more sophisticated, if you're tall and you can boot somebody, you get in the team. And that's why we're shy. And it's all down to the relative age effect, and that's the surprising thing. But even in that, a freelance journalist rang up to say it's terrible that NHS Highland is wasting money in football research. Shut up. It's interesting, and there's got to be a place for interest, and by the way, he did it in his free time, so we weren't wasting any taxpayers' money. We've been doing more about surveys, actually, who is using social media, are they using emails, who's using internet, so we can actually build up our own intelligence. And social media, a bit like anything else, this is not a toilet, for those of you who don't know, this is a hide. It's a bird hide. And the thing about a bird hide is that it allows you to get close to something. And once you get close to it and it becomes familiar, people don't change their behaviour, they start behaving in type. So in other words, you can only keep an act up for so long, and mine was for about a minute at the start. And the point about that is actually things will come out. Social media is not actually risky. I think it's actually helpful because it tells you out there if someone's making a bit of what would be the correct term for it, but doing something against the organisation that's disrespectful to reputation. I went to one place recently where I was 3 staff in a hotel, didn't know who I was, chatting away about patients. If they were doing that on social media, we'd know about it and we'd have to do something about it. So stuff is always happening. You can get frightened by it, or you can just say we're going to tackle it and we're going to move on. Lastly, and disappointingly, trust the messenger. I think it does depend on your reputation and what's coming out. This was a tweet from Lance Armstrong last year to get everyone to go to Dornoch. I was one of those that went along to see the great man. What a difference 1 year on. You know, disappointing. Disappointing to say the least. I can get angry now. And then to close, you think it won't take over your life, but it might. This is a message from my mum to you all. Put that bloody tweet away. I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maimie. What a great speaker to raise the energy after lunchtime. Traditionally, everyone's like, oh, and you were brilliant. So thank you very much. So we're